Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going deep on democracy, self-government, and what it actually means to be a responsible citizen. I mean, these ideas are kind of more relevant than ever these days, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about it, this source material we're looking at,
Yeah.
it was written way back in 1951. It's almost like we're opening this time capsule,
Yeah.
full of insights.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be exploring Democracy as Self-Government by Albert Pike, ready to dive into his ideas together.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Pike, right off the bat, he kind of lays out this pattern he sees throughout history. Civilizations, they rise up, they try out this democracy thing, and then they just sort of crumble. It's kind of a sobering cycle when you think about it.
It really makes you think,
Yeah.
what is it about trying to govern ourselves that seems to always trip us up? And Pike seems to suggest that, well, humans have a pretty long track record of, getting in their own way.
Yeah, greed, conflict, just completely neglecting the rights of others.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's this blueprint for how democracies fail. And here's the question that Pike kind of throws out there. Is this happening again right now? Are we repeating the same mistakes all over again?
That's a question worth thinking about for sure. But Pike, instead of just focusing on all the, external systems, he takes us inward. He says that real true democracy, depends on individual self-mastery.
So less about political parties and voting and all that, and more about how we govern ourselves, like internally.
Exactly. He really makes the point that if we want a society, that has honesty and integrity and all that, well, it all starts with each one of us. Controlling our, impulses, being self-aware, all that inner work. That's where it all begins.
Okay, so it's like if our own, individual governments are a mess, chaotic, making bad decisions, then that's going to be reflected in who we choose as leaders, the laws that we make, everything.
Exactly. It's like this ripple effect, going outward from each of us. So think about it this way. What are the choices that you're making? What kind of citizen are you in your own little personal republic?
That's a really good question to consider. So Pike digs into some key definitions, and he defines law in this really interesting way. He basically says it's like a prescription for performance.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating there is he's basically saying that our thoughts and our actions are actually what create the laws that we end up, being bound by. It's almost like we're writing the script for our own lives.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking like manifestation here?
In a way, yeah. And he goes on to define justice as, basically the outcome of those actions.
Yeah.
Whatever we set in motion, it eventually comes back to us.
Like a cosmic cause and effect kind of system.
Exactly. And then there's freedom. And this is where things get really interesting. He doesn't define freedom as like, doing whatever you want whenever you want. It's something much deeper than that.
Okay. I'm definitely intrigued. Tell me more.
He defines it as unattachment, like specifically letting go of needing all these material things, embracing a sense of duty. It's about being free from all that, all that stuff outside of us that we think is going to make us happy.
So true freedom, it's an inside job, not something we find in a shopping mall.
That's exactly it. And it ties back to self-government, too. If we're always chasing after things, well, then we just become slaves to those desires. True freedom comes from mastering those desires.
This is making me rethink my whole Amazon wish list.
Oh.
Okay, so we've got individual self-mastery and these really, profound definitions of these concepts. What's next on Pike's democracy roadmap?
Well, he throws out a pretty big warning sign, beware the demagogue.
Ooh, yeah, that super charismatic leader that, promises you everything but that.
Exactly. Pike says these guys, they're masters at exploiting people's, fears and desires. They get into power by making all these promises that can't possibly be kept. But then what happens next is sadly pretty predictable.
They turn into dictators, right? History is full of these stories, unfortunately, yeah. And a lot of times the people who are, most attracted to the demagogue in the first place, well, they're the ones that end up suffering the most. It's like they get so caught up in the whole show that they lose sight of what's really going on.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
Pike's advice is to be a critical thinker. Don't just take all those, shiny promises at face value. Look past all the charisma and really ask yourself, what are this leader's actions saying? Do they actually line up with their words? What's their track record actually look like?
It's about, looking beyond the surface, being discerning, especially these days with so much information flying around. It's so easy to just get swept away by, slick marketing, whether it's for a product or a politician.
Exactly. Right. Now, on a more hopeful note, Pike talks about the power of the ballot. He sees voting as a symbol of democracy's potential, but also its vulnerability.
So it's this powerful tool, but it can be used for good or for, not so good.
Exactly. And he stresses that, just casting a vote isn't enough. True democracy requires citizens who are, engaged and informed, who really participate in the process, and who hold their elected officials accountable.
So it's like voting is just the starting line, not the finish line. It's about staying active and informed all the time.
Precisely. And Pike makes this interesting point about the dangers of voter apathy. He says when people check out and don't participate well, it creates this void. And that void can be filled by people who don't have, our best interests in mind.
So our responsibility goes way beyond just our own lives. It directly impacts, the health of our whole democracy. That's a powerful thought.
It is. Now, things are about to get a little unexpected. Pike throws this whole concept of the soul into the mix.
Okay, bring on the unexpected. What's Pike's take on the soul?
He calls it the breath form. Okay, just stay with me here.
Oh, I'm all ears. I'm ready to have my mind blown.
So he describes the form as like the soul itself, which is what shapes the body's design. And then there's the breath, which is the life force, the thing that animates it. It's like this, powerful duo that makes us who we are.
Okay, so it's this energy that makes us more than just flesh and blood. I think I'm following so far. Where does he go with this?
Well, he suggests the true immortality, and this is where it gets really deep. It comes from uniting our conscious selves with this thing he calls our thinker and knower.
Whoa, okay, so he's talking about something beyond, just our bodies living forever. It's like our essence, our true selves connecting to something much bigger.
That's the core of it. It's like tapping into this deeper understanding of ourselves, and that changes how we act in the world.
Yeah.
It elevates our purpose beyond just personal gain.
Oh, so like recognizing that we're all connected. We're part of something bigger than ourselves. Would that make us, more likely to consider the common good, make choices that benefit everybody?
Yeah, that's the idea. It's
Yeah.
like this shift in perspective that Pike thinks is really important for democracy to, really work. Okay, now get ready for this next one. It's a bit of a mind bender. He brings in this idea of thought creation.
Thought creation. Okay, now you've got my attention. What's that all about?
Pike's argument is that thoughts, they're not just these like fleeting things in our heads. He thinks they're these powerful forces that actually shape the world. Like everything we see, the objects, the institutions, even civilizations, they're like manifestations of thought.
Well, hold on. So he's saying that our thoughts are literally creating the world around us. That's a lot of power.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. He's suggesting that if we could become more aware of our thoughts, we could use that power to intentionally create a better world.
So it's not just about positive thinking. It's about understanding that our thoughts have this creative force and using that responsibly. That's kind of a big responsibility to think about.
It is. And Pike emphasizes that we're doing this all the time, whether we realize it or not. Our thoughts, they shape our experiences and they influence the world around us.
Okay, so thoughts become things. Does that mean every time I'm like super stressed out about something, I'm actually contributing to more stress in the world?
Oh, that's a very simplified way to put it, but yeah.
Essentially.
And on the flip side, when we're focused on those positive and constructive thoughts, well, we're putting more of that energy out into the world too.
Okay. That's both empowering and kind of scary at the same time. Makes you want to be careful about what you're, dwelling on.
Definitely. Pike even digs into how this whole thought creation thing actually works. He says it's a combination of feelings, desires, and thoughts all working together.
So like emotions are the fuel, desires are the direction, and thoughts are the steering wheel.
That's a great analogy. And he thinks that's how our current civilization has come to be, through this collective process of thought creation.
Wow, it's like we're all co-creating this massive reality together. Makes you want to, step up your thought game for sure.
Absolutely. Now, to add another layer to this, Pike divides humanity into 4 classes based on their thought patterns.
Okay, let's break down these classes. Who are these thought groups, and how do they influence things?
He describes the laborers. These are folks who are focused on, the practical physical stuff. Then there are the traders, driven by material wealth and possessions. Then there are the thinkers, who are, more intellectual. And finally, you have the knowers, all about seeking wisdom and deeper understanding.
So like different approaches to the world, different priorities that shape how we think and act. But are we like stuck in one category forever?
Nope, not at all. Pike says we all have parts of each of these classes within us, and our dominant thoughts are what determine, which one we mostly identify with. So you can actually shift those patterns.
That's good to know. It means we can actually change our thinking and, move into a different class. So it's not about judging these groups as good or bad. It's about understanding how they contribute to society as a whole.
Precisely. And Pike emphasizes that all four classes are needed for a balanced and harmonious society. Each one brings something unique to the table.
Okay, next up, money. I have a feeling Pike's got some strong opinions on this one based on what we've been talking about.
You bet. He's not a fan of money worship. He sees it as this trap that can lead to feeling empty and disconnected. He says true wealth is about developing your character, your knowledge, your connection to something bigger than yourself.
So all that material stuff, it's not really what matters in the end.
That's what he's saying. He thinks it's all temporary. True riches are the things that last beyond the physical world.
It's a good reminder to focus on the stuff that really matters, the things money can't buy. Now, what about big business? How did Pike view those big forces in society?
He had this nuanced view. He acknowledged that big business has the potential to, drive innovation and progress and all that. But he also saw the dangers of unchecked growth and, putting profit ahead of people and the planet.
It sounds like a pretty early version of a conscious capitalist. Think he'd be out there advocating for ethical businesses today?
Oh, for sure. He was a big believer in businesses operating with integrity, serving the needs of the community, not just their bottom line.
Okay, that resonates with me. It's
Yeah.
about being a responsible consumer, supporting the businesses that share our values.
Exactly. Now, remember that warning about the demagogue? Pike saw a similar thing happening in the world of party politics.
He wasn't a big fan of the two-party system.
He was very critical of it, actually.
Yeah.
He saw party politics as this game where winning is all that matters, not serving the people. And he thought it really got in the way of true democracy.
So what's the solution? How do we escape this, endless cycle of arguing between parties?
Pike's answer is to have more citizens who are engaged and empowered. He wanted people to go beyond just voting and really take an active role in shaping their government.
So it's like, don't just complain about the system, be the change kind of thing. But that's easier said than done, right? How do we actually do that?
Well, that's where Pike introduces his concept of the royal sport, which is self-control. He thought it was the most important skill for both individuals and society to really transform.
Okay, I'm all for a little self-improvement. Tell me more about this royal sport.
He saw it as this lifelong practice, this constant effort to master our inner world, our thoughts, feelings, desires. He even said it was harder and more rewarding than any other sport because it's about conquering yourself, not someone else.
So self-control is like the ultimate personal victory.
Exactly. And Pike believed that when people cultivate self-control, it creates this ripple effect, making society more just and harmonious.
Oh, okay. So how do we become masters of our own, inner domain? What were some of Pike's tips for reaching that royal sport level of self-control?
Well, he starts by talking about how the world wasn't created. It's always existed, constantly changing and transforming. And within this ever-evolving world, Pike sees humans as this kind of paradox,
Okay, I sense a deep philosophical dive coming on.
You got it. He points out how we humans are capable of such amazing compassion and also terrible cruelty. We build incredible civilizations, then we tear them down.
It's that duality,
Yeah.
the ability to be both good and evil that makes us so unpredictable and honestly kind of scary.
Exactly. And Pike believed that all of this stems from us not really understanding ourselves.
Yeah.
We've mastered the external world. We build cities and technology and all that. But we've kind of neglected our inner world, exploring our own consciousness.
So we've conquered the physical world, but we haven't really figured out the world inside our own minds.
That's a perfect way to put it. And Pike thinks that this inner work is really crucial for democracy to succeed. He says that a society of self-aware people would naturally create a more just and balanced system of government.
Okay, that makes sense. If we're all, messed up on the inside, it's going to show up in our systems and institutions. So how do we start exploring that inner world? How do we really get to know ourselves?
Pike introduces this really interesting concept he calls the conscious doer. It's like the I that lives within each of us. And he says that this doer is separate from the body. It even exists after death.
Oh, okay, so we're talking about the soul, the spirit, something that goes beyond our physical form.
Exactly. And he believes that this doer, it enters the body when we're young, marked by those big questions kids ask, like, what am I, or where did I come from?
It's funny. I remember asking those questions as a kid. Like, there's this deep curiosity about who we are and where we fit in.
Right. And Pike says those questions should be encouraged, not shut down. He thinks they show that the doer is arriving from somewhere else and needs help navigating this new world.
So we should nurture that curiosity in kids, honor that desire to understand their true nature. It's a pretty cool way to look at it.
It is. And Pike connects this back to the importance of education. Not just learning facts and figures,
Yeah.
but learning about ourselves, cultivating self-awareness and critical thinking.
So it's about more than just memorizing stuff. It's about learning to think for ourselves, to question things, to examine what we believe.
Exactly. He believed that true learning comes from inside us, from tapping into the wisdom we all have within.
Like that saying, all the answers are within. We just have to figure out how to access them. So how do we do that? How do we connect with that inner wisdom, that connection to our higher selves?
Pike gets pretty specific here. He digs into how feelings and desire actually work, explaining that they operate through our nervous system and bloodstream, separate from our senses.
So we're talking about emotions, but not in the way we typically think about them. More like these deeper fundamental energies that drive our experiences.
Exactly. And he argues that the doer is this unique combination of feeling and desire. It's like the operator of the physical body.
So we're these complex beings made up of feelings, desires, and thoughts, all interacting with each other. It's like we have this whole universe going on inside of us.
Yeah. He even suggests that our senses are like these messengers from the outside world, sending information to the doer. And the doer then interprets and responds.
So we're bombarded with information constantly, but it's up to the doer to decide what to do with it, like this internal command center navigating our experience.
Precisely. And Pike argues that we become way too reliant on our senses, too caught up in the material world. And as a result, we've lost touch with our true self.
So we become slaves to our desires, for comfort, pleasure, possessions, instead of being the masters of ourselves.
That's exactly what he's saying. He even compares it to being in this hypnotic trance, controlled by things outside of us instead of our inner wisdom.
Okay, that's a powerful image. So how do we wake up from that trance? How do we reclaim our power?
He suggests cultivating self-awareness, recognizing that the doer is separate from the body and the senses. He even gives some techniques for doing this, like focusing on feelings and desires separately from, the sensations they cause.
So becoming aware of those subtle energies within us, not getting lost in all the external noise and stimulation.
Exactly. And he says that by doing that, we can train our minds to think independently from the body and the senses, which ultimately leads to a deeper understanding of who we truly are.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all relates back to self-government. It's about reclaiming that inner authority, that agency.
Exactly. And it connects back to his whole concept of the soul. He argues that by practicing this self-awareness, the doer can actually communicate with its thinker and knower, tapping into this vast wisdom and knowledge that's within all of us.
So it's not just about individual enlightenment. It's about connecting with this universal source of wisdom, like we're all tapped into this wellspring of knowledge.
That's the idea. And he believes that's the key to real democracy. A society made up of self-governed individuals guided by inner wisdom, not external forces.
This is getting deep. Okay, let's dive into how Pike described the breath form and what he said about death and immortality. I'm ready to have my mind blown a little more.
So he explains that the form part of the breath form is the soul itself, and the breath is the life force that animates it. He says that death happens when this breath form leaves the body, but the soul keeps going.
So it's like the breath is the thing keeping the body alive, but when it departs, the soul is free from its physical form. But where does it go?
That's where his idea of reincarnation comes in. Pike suggested that the doer keeps existing after death, taking on new bodies, experiencing new lifetimes, until it chooses to go back to its thinker and knower. And that's how it achieves true immortality.
So each lifetime is like a chapter in this much bigger story, a journey of learning and growth that eventually leads us back to our source. It's like this cosmic cycle of learning and evolving.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And he connects this concept to democracy, too, saying that understanding our true nature as these eternal beings, well, it's essential for building a just and harmonious society.
Because if we realize that we're all connected, we're all on this journey together as souls, we're more likely to treat each other with compassion and respect.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from just ourselves to the well-being of everyone, recognizing that we're all in this together. Okay, get ready for this next concept. It's a big one.
Hit me with it.
Pike introduces this idea of thought creation. He says that thoughts aren't just these fleeting things in our heads. They're actually powerful forces that shape reality.
Hold on, so he's saying our thoughts are literally creating the world around us.
That's exactly what he's saying. He believed that everything we see in the physical world, from tiny objects to entire institutions, they're all manifestations of thought.
Whoa, so we're not just passively watching the world go by, but we're actively creating it. That's pretty amazing and a little bit scary.
It is. He suggests that if we could become more aware of our thoughts, we could actually use that power to build the kind of world we want to live in.
So it's not just about thinking happy thoughts.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that our thoughts have this creative energy and using it in a responsible way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pike argued that our thoughts, they create our experiences and they influence the world around us, for good or bad. He even said that our civilization right now, with all its good and bad, is a result of this collective thought creation process.
That's mind-blowing. It's like we're all weaving our thoughts and desires into the fabric of reality. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And then Pike goes on to divide humanity into 4 classes based on their thought patterns.
Okay, tell me about these thought groups.
He calls the first group the laborers, or body men. They're the ones focused on, physical needs and what they can achieve. Then you've got the traders, or desire men. They're all about material possessions and getting more stuff. The thinkers, or thinking men, are the ones who love to dive into ideas. And finally, there are the knowers, or knowledge men. They're all about seeking wisdom and understanding.
So it's like different operating systems for the human mind, different priorities and motivations that shape how we think and act.
Yeah, you could say that. And he emphasizes that we all have bits of each class inside us. And the thoughts we focus on the most, those are the ones that determine which class we identify with.
So we're not stuck in one category forever. We can actually change our thinking and move into a different class.
Absolutely. It's all about recognizing that our minds are powerful. We can shape our experiences and our place in the world.
I like that. So we're not limited by our current thought patterns. Now I'm curious about Pike's view on money. I have a feeling he had some strong opinions about it.
You're spot on. He warned against putting money above everything else. He thought it could lead to a pretty empty and meaningless life, even if you have a lot of it.
So he's saying money doesn't buy happiness.
That's the gist of it. He argued that real wealth comes from the things we can't lose, things like character knowledge and our connection to something bigger than ourselves. He said material things are temporary, but real wealth lasts way beyond this physical world.
That's a great reminder to focus on building that inner wealth instead of always chasing after more stuff. Okay, now how about big business? What did Pike think about those powerful forces in society?
He took a balanced view. He saw that big businesses could do good things like driving innovation and progress. But he also warned that they could easily become too focused on profits, putting that ahead of people and the environment.
So he'd be a supporter of ethical and responsible business practices, making sure profits don't hurt people or the planet.
Definitely. He believed businesses should do the right thing, considering the well-being of everyone involved, not just their own profits.
All right, now let's talk about a topic. I know Pike had strong opinions about party politics.
Oh, he was definitely not a fan. He was very critical of party politics. He saw it as this game where winning was more important than helping people. And he thought it really got in the way of true democracy.
So not exactly a fan of the two-party system then.
Nope. He saw it as dividing people and stopping them from working together.
So if party politics isn't the answer, then what is? How do we create a society that's more just and harmonious?
That's where his idea of the royal sport of self-control comes in. He believed it was the key to transforming both individuals and society as a whole.
Okay, I'm ready to hear more about this royal sport.
Pike saw self-control as this essential skill that we should all be working on. He even compared it to a sport. Something challenging but rewarding.
What made it so challenging in his view?
He said it was tougher than any other sport because you're not competing against someone else. You're conquering yourself.
So mastering our inner world is the ultimate victory.
Exactly. He saw it as a lifelong journey, this constant practice of mastering our thoughts, feelings, and desires. And he believed that when individuals achieve this mastery, it creates a ripple effect, making society more just and peaceful.
Yeah, I can see that. If we're all just following our impulses, it leads to chaos. But learning to govern ourselves, that creates a more stable and harmonious environment for everyone.
Right. Now, to really understand how to cultivate this royal sport level of self-control, Pike takes us on this kind of philosophical journey. He begins by describing how the world wasn't created. It's always been here, constantly changing and transforming. And within this ever-changing world, Pike sees humans as this unique paradox.
Okay, let's hear about this paradox.
He points out that humans are capable of incredible acts of kindness and compassion, but also horrific cruelty. We build amazing civilizations, then we destroy them.
That duality, that ability to be both good and evil, is what makes us so unpredictable and a little bit scary, to be honest.
Exactly. And Pike believed that this all comes from us not truly understanding ourselves. We've mastered the external world, building cities and technology, but we've neglected that inner world, the exploration of our own consciousness.
So it's like we've conquered the physical world, but we haven't quite figured out the world inside our own minds.
That's a great way to put it. And Pike believes this inner exploration is essential for democracy to truly work. He argued that a society of self-aware people would naturally create a system of government that's more just and harmonious.
Okay, I can see how that makes sense. If we're all a mess internally, it's going to show up in how we run things. So how do we start exploring that inner world? How can we get to know ourselves on a deeper level?
This is where Pike brings in a really interesting concept. He calls it the conscious doer. It's the I that's inside each of us. And he says this doer isn't part of the physical body. It continues to exist even after death.
So are we talking about a soul or spirit, something that goes beyond our physical form?
Exactly. He believed that this doer enters our bodies when we're young, marked by those big questions that kids ask, like, what am I?
Yeah.
Or, where did I come from?
That's funny. I remember asking those questions when I was little. It's like this natural curiosity we have about our place in the world.
Right. And Pike says, we shouldn't dismiss those questions. We should encourage them. He believes those questions show the doer arriving from somewhere else, needing guidance in this new world.
So nurture that curiosity in kids. Help them understand their true nature. That's a beautiful way to look at it.
It is. And Pike connects this to the importance of education, not just in the traditional sense, but in learning about ourselves, developing self-awareness and critical thinking.
So it's not just about memorizing facts. It's about learning how to think for ourselves, to question things, to examine our own beliefs.
Exactly. He believed that real learning comes from within, from accessing that inner wisdom that we all have.
Like the saying goes, all the answers are within. We just need to figure out how to tap into them. So how do we do that? How do we connect with our inner wisdom?
Pike gets pretty specific here. He delves into how feelings and desires actually work, explaining that they operate through our nervous system and bloodstream, separate from our senses.
Okay, so we're talking about emotions, but not in the usual sense. More like these fundamental energies that shape our experiences.
Right. He argued that the doer is this unique mix of feeling and desire. It's like the one who's in control of the body.
So we're complex beings made up of feelings, desires, and thoughts, all interacting with each other. It's like we have a whole universe going on inside us.
He even suggests that our senses are like messengers from the outside world, delivering information to the doer, who then decides how to respond.
So information is constantly coming at us, but it's up to the doer to decide what to do with it. It's like having an internal control center navigating our experience.
Exactly. And Pike argues that we rely way too much on our senses. We're too caught up in the material world. And because of that, we've lost touch with our true selves.
So we become slaves to our desires for comfort, pleasure, possessions, instead of being masters of ourselves.
That's what he's saying. He compares it to being in a hypnotic trance, controlled by external forces rather than our inner wisdom.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful image. How do we break free from that trance? How do we get our power back?
He suggests we focus on developing self-awareness, recognizing that the doer is different from the body and the senses. He even offers some techniques for this, like focusing on feelings and desires separately from the sensations they create.
So it's about becoming aware of those subtle energies within us, not getting swept away by all the external distractions.
Exactly. And he says that by doing this, we can train our minds to think for themselves, independently of the body and senses, which ultimately leads to a deeper understanding of who we really are.
Okay, I'm seeing the connection to self-government here. It's about reclaiming our inner authority, our ability to make choices.
Right. And it links back to his idea of the soul. He argues that by practicing this self-awareness, the doer can actually communicate with its thinker and knower. That's how we access the vast wisdom and knowledge that's inside all of us.
So it's not just about personal enlightenment. It's about tapping into this universal source of wisdom. Like we're all connected to this incredible well of knowledge.
That's it. And Pike believes that's the secret to true democracy. A society where people govern themselves, guided by inner wisdom, not external pressures.
This is getting really profound. Okay, let's talk about how Pike described the breath form and what it means for death and immortality.
He explained that the form, part of the breath form, is the soul, and the breath is the life force that keeps it going. He says death happens when this breath form leaves the body, but the soul itself continues to exist.
So the breath is like the engine that keeps the body running, but when it goes, the soul is released. What happens to the soul then?
That's where his idea of reincarnation comes in. Pike suggested that the doer doesn't disappear after death. It takes on new bodies and lives new lives until it decides to reunite with its thinker and knower. That's when it achieves true immortality.
So each lifetime is a chapter in a much larger story, a journey of learning and growth that leads us back to our true source, like a cosmic cycle of evolution.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And Pike connects this to the idea of democracy, saying that understanding our true nature as eternal beings, well, it's essential for building a society that's just and harmonious.
Because when we understand that we're all connected, we're all on this journey together, we're more likely to treat each other with kindness and respect.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from what we want as individuals to the well-being of everyone, recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah, it really is about looking at the big picture, seeing that we're all connected. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone pretty deep into Albert Pike's Democracy is Self-Government. What are some of the key takeaways for you? What really stuck out?
Well, for me, one of the most powerful ideas is that, a democracy can only really succeed if its citizens are people who can govern themselves. It's not just about having the right laws and systems.
Yeah.
We need people who are developing those inner qualities, self-control, responsibility, a sense of working towards the common good. Right. It's like Pike is saying that true democracy, it has to start on the inside, with each individual transforming themselves. And then that change spreads out into our communities and our political systems. We can't just rely on, laws and institutions to create a fair and harmonious society. It starts with each of us taking responsibility for our thoughts, our feelings, our actions.
Everything. And that inner transformation, like Pike says, it begins with understanding what the soul really is. Recognizing our true nature as these eternal beings that are capable of so much more than we often realize. It's about connecting with that deeper part of ourselves, that source of wisdom and guidance that's already there inside of us.
That's what's so great about this book. It's not just about politics, It's this really profound exploration of what it means to be human and how we can live lives that are, more meaningful.
Yeah, exactly.
Another takeaway that really hit home for me is the idea that true freedom, it's not about having a lot of money or possessions. It comes from mastering ourselves, from becoming the rulers of our own inner world.
It's about breaking free from all those desires that keep us trapped, In that cycle of always wanting more, true freedom is about living according to our values, acting with integrity, not being controlled by our impulses or, things outside of us.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial point.
Yeah.
The power of thought. Pike believed that our thoughts are incredibly powerful. They actually shape our reality, both on an individual level and a collective one. We're always creating the world around us with our thoughts, whether we realize it or not.
That's pretty amazing. And a little bit scary if you think about it. It means we have the power to make positive change, but it also means we have to be really careful about what we're focusing on, the energy we're putting out into the world.
Exactly. Pike is reminding us that we're not just spectators in this reality. We're active creators. And that means we have a responsibility to use that power wisely, to cultivate thoughts and beliefs that create a better world for everyone.
And one last thing that really resonated with me is Pike's emphasis on balance and cooperation, both within ourselves and in how we relate to others. He reminds us that we're all interconnected, part of this web of life, and that our well-being is tied to the well-being of the whole. It's recognizing that we're all in this together, and when we work together and support each other, we can create a world that's more just and harmonious.
Yeah, it's about letting go of that narrow self-interest.
Yeah.
And embracing a more holistic perspective, seeing how everything is connected.
This has been an incredible journey. Pike's ideas, they're just as relevant today as they were, over 70 years ago. His understanding of human nature, self-government, the power of thought. It's really timeless. This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's been a really thought-provoking conversation.
And as always, we want to leave you with something to think about. If, like Pike says, we're all governments within ourselves, what kind of government will you choose to be? Are you a benevolent ruler, guiding your inner kingdom with wisdom and compassion? Or are you more of a tyrant, letting your fears and desires create chaos and disharmony?
It's a challenge to really look at our own inner world, to examine our thoughts, feelings, and actions, and make conscious choices that reflect who we truly want to be, both for ourselves and for the world.
So go out there and govern yourselves wisely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Albert Pike's Democracy is Self-Government. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those thoughts positive.